Okay. Kathleen Allen?
Here.
Tom Chapa?
Here.
Heather Del Conte?
Here.
Pamela Dowd?
Here.
Lisa Glidden?
Here.
James McKenzie?
Here.
Linda Serino?
Here.
And Zeta Olson.
Here.
Thank you. We will move to the floor to the public session of the board meeting. It is expected that speakers will conduct themselves in a civil manner and will be ruled out of order for any statement that constitutes a direct threat against officers, employees, or students of the school district, or that is obscene. No personal attacks will be tolerated, nor should any speaker address specific district personnel or students by name or suggestions. Questions or comments concerning matters that are not on the agenda will be taken under consideration and referred to the superintendent for appropriate actions. Members of the community may comment on any matter related to district business. The board president may request a brief description of the topic the speaker plans to address. Any group or organization wishing to address the board must identify a single spokesperson. Presentation should be as brief as possible, and no speaker will be permitted to speak for longer than 3 minutes. There are several people that have submitted items, so I will read them now. Tara Pritchard of 473 Westlake Road. Is there a plan in place for the Oswego Middle School and High School to return to all this school year? I believe even a hybrid model at this point would be acceptable. Parents have been given the choice to keep their children at home and fully remote if they choose. However, those of us who do feel it is safe to send our children aren't being given that option. Next person, Shannon Davis, 4519 County Route 4. She just feels that the senior class is being robbed of their senior year. Next is Joe and Sue Bakos, 44 Garden Drive. What is the plan for getting our students back into the classroom in person? Our middle school and high school students have been out of school going on 1 year. This is such an injustice to them, both mentally and educationally. The 30-minute classes are not enough time for them to learn much when there is attendance to be taken along with the disruption of internet connectivity. There are plenty of other school districts in our area that have managed to hold in-person classes at least 2 days a week. Oswego Community Christian School has been in person 5 days a week since September and has been pretty successful. If there's no plan in place, I would suggest reaching out to other districts and follow their lead. You have now set a deadline of February 1st, 2021 for in-person schooling to begin again. I and many other parents in this community feel this should include the middle school and high school students. To our students, keeping them at home, and we are not living up to the district's vision of fully prepared and life ready. We are falling way short. She also added a note that they know a student that had a college visit a couple weeks ago, and the admissions personnel cannot believe how long our high school students have been remote. Next is Tara Sawyer, 12 Margaret Street. When will the high school open in-person learning? All the children deserve this opportunity. Last one is Terry Robbins, 41 Jamar Drive. I would like to know the progress on the renovations of the middle school. It seems that with virtual learning that the renovations could move along at a rapid pace and that the repurposing of Layton wouldn't be an issue any longer. It would have been stressful to students with the original plan, but closing their beloved school after a pandemic would be traumatic to many of them. They have lost so much in this. I want to see our children thrive, not just survive. And that is all the submissions. And we would move to the superintendent's report with Dr. Kelvin.
Good evening, board. Glad to see everyone back on this evening. I heard some of the questions and some of the comments that were provided in this evening's public comment. And I just wanted to, start out tonight. Matt, if you can turn to the next page, please. I want to just start by sharing a couple of things. First, I'm just going to jump right to the middle school reopening plan. So I know that there was some information that was also put in a local newspaper, letter to the editor. I want to be very clear that when returning this year to this school year, one of the things that we set up front was that we're going to start with in-person learning with our elementary students, and our goal has always been to bring our middle school and high school students back. And given the complexity of the health and safety concerns that were at hand when we opened, we said that we would work on re-entering students as the year went along. I want to be clear that the district is committed to bringing back our middle school students and our high school students. Because of the pandemic, some things have been pushed back, but we are working very diligently to move our plan along and get students back right away as soon as we can. Please know in the some of the information we heard that was circulating in the public, it said that there are no plans that are in the works. That is not true. If folks go on and watch any of the last couple of board meetings, you will hear that certainly plans are in the work. Currently, there are 30 stakeholders who have been working together and gathering and really planning on trying to bring our students back, especially at the middle school first and then at the high school. Currently, we have been working through operations, health and safety concerns, and instructional program planning. I will tell you that in terms of operations and health and safety, we are pretty much there. Right now, the biggest thing that the hurdle that we need to finish and complete is the instructional program. What will those schedules look like for our students who are coming back? And we're working very diligently on that. I heard some comments tonight that talked about looking at other districts and what other people are doing. We are doing that. We have actually had people on from other schools. We have actually done visits. We have some additional visits this week because we want to do this and do it very well. There were some comments out in the public circulating around the capital construction project at the high school was what was causing us not to bring back kids to the high school. That is completely untrue. There is no connection for the high school construction plan to this. That's just is not true. I want to be clear that I know that this is a challenging time for our families, for our community. And I want to again say, I am committed, we are committed to getting our kids back as soon as we possibly can. I want to also say that we're not alone. I've heard people say, well, how come this school did it and you didn't do it? Every community is different. The amount of spread with COVID-19 is also different. The concerns are different in different communities. There are we are one of four schools in our region who have not had their 7 through 12 students back in place. Some are larger districts, some are smaller districts, and all are working through the same concerns that we are working through. Our plan may look a little different from those other districts who are either back already or those who are planning to come back. However, I want to be clear again, our goal is to really honestly bring our students back. So we do ask for the patience and the partnership of our community as we continue to move forward. Tonight, you'll hear some more information about who is interested in coming back. And I will, as we have all of our schedules all set and developed, I will share that. And we'll have some PR work that will be PR information that will be going out to the community very shortly to help people understand where we're at in the process, how far away are we. At this point in time, should we be able to get our schedule solidified, we're working on a reopening back towards the middle of February. So I know that this is a challenge for folks, but we are committed to moving things forward. So I just wanted to share that up front so that everyone heard that from my perspective in terms of the middle school reopening. And tonight, I wanted to also share the board on a separate note in terms of our capital project. Our next meeting will bring you more details around what's happening with the capital project. And we'll talk a little bit about phase 3 at our next meeting. But with respect to the capital project, tonight, that is certainly an area that I'd like to touch bases on with respect to the emergency project that we are working on. So I have tonight folks on from King & King, Jim King and a group of other folks tonight. And they're going to just share with us where we're at. We see Craig and Scott and Jim King and also Corey on with us tonight. And we'd like to provide that update. And Peter is on as well. And once they're all set board, we'll be back to talk a little bit more about our program budget presentation. And then we'll talk a little bit more about our educational programs. And again, we'll talk some more on the what we see happening in terms of who'd like to come back at the middle school, the high school, and what's happening with our elementary programs as well. Okay, so with that said, unless there are any other questions, I'd like to start with King & King to come on and share where we're at. Are we all good, board? Okay. All right. If you can go to the next slide, please, Matt. Okay. Craig and Corey and Jim and Peter are here with us tonight. And this is the timeline that was previously shared with the board on multiple occasions. And we want them just to share an update as to where we're at with the board. Okay, Craig, turn it over to you.
Thanks, Dr. Calvin. And thanks for having us with you tonight. Just to give you an update, as you're probably aware from the timeline, I can give you a little more specific dates. The documents are at the printers, and they will be submitted parallel to State Ed Department, as well as to contractors for bidding. Currently, we have a pre-bid meeting where we review the project with bidders scheduled for Monday, the 25th. We have a bid opening scheduled for February 2nd, and we're doing that to kind of hit your February 9th board meeting. So we'll make sure we have the information to the board on recommendations, suggestions for the lowest responsible bidder for discussion and hopefully acceptance on the night of the 9th. And that sets us up for hopefully award and then construction February through April. And we're wrapping this up as soon as we can in April so that they can file final cost reports and generate that emergency aid back to the district. Okay. Is there another slide, Dr. Calvin?
Matt, go ahead, please, and turn Matt.
Craig, can I just say something real quick?
Yes.
I believe we meet on the 2nd of February and then again on the 16th. So I don't we're meeting on the 9th, just to clarify.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we may make an adjustment on that if we need to, and we'll let you know. Okay. Any other questions on the schedule portion?
We'll check the calendar, just an FYI, because I'm seeing on the calendar here the board meeting scheduled for the 9th. Maybe something may be off. We'll double check that date. Heather, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You're on mute there.
Yeah, no, it wasn't neither it wasn't making sense to me either. So I was trying to find it on my phone actually. I was listening, but yeah, if we could check on that.
Yeah.
I think the board meeting is on February 9th because there is only one board meeting in February due to the February break.
Yes. Yeah.
So I apologize if I have that wrong. It's
No problem.
my mistake then. Sorry.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for following up on that.
Okay, Matt, can you go to the next screen there?
Okay. With this, I think I'll turn this over to Scott and Corey when it gets to his slide as far as to update you on what the actual final looks like.
Okay, good evening, everybody. So I'm not sure that the graphic that's shown here has all the detail that we had sent over, but I know you had seen part of the two profiles pieces that are on the left-hand side of the screen, figure 2. Basically, that is the design that was moved forward, and essentially the entire section of the field will end up with the 2-foot soil cover that will provide a barrier between the field surfaces and any soils that are located at deeper depths. The work that we've done in pre-design and in design has basically limited the areas of the field that are going to require soil treatment prior to removal from the field. This is the soils that have high metals levels and are requiring treatment to bring them below hazardous disposal criteria. There's about 3 sections of the field that will require that treatment. And part of the design work that was done, and I think Corey can speak to this, is they've modified the drainage patterns on the field so that most of the northern half of the field will require added fill above some of the contaminated soils, and then have the 2-foot soil cover applied. whereas the sections on the lower half of the field will require soils to be removed and appropriately disposed of, and then placed with a 2-foot soil cover. But that modified the way the drainage had been laid out on the field. And what that has done is it starts to reduce the quantities of soil that have to be disposed of offsite, because some of the material that is excavated from the southern half of the site is used as low-level fill on the northern half of the site prior to the placement of the soil cover. But at the end of the day, the entire surface from the south to north has that 2-foot soil cover as a barrier, which is what the DEC documents require for separation.
Okay.
Is there another slide that shows in red and green the fill and the cut?
We do the slides for some reason. I'm not sure why they're coming up this way on the screen. It's a newer model of PowerPoint, but it appears that something may be going on with the slide. We're not sure, and we're looking at it right now, trying to understand what's happening. But I think pushing from the new PowerPoint to the newer version of PowerPoint to this where we're at now, for some reason they're coming up. This slide is coming up without us being able to see the picture. Can you talk us through it, please, Corey?
Yes, of course.
Apologies.
So right now, under the documents that everyone has seen that originally went out to bid, over at Wilbur Field and Mini Wilbur Field, there were 2 new grass soccer fields that were going to be constructed. Going through a couple iterations of this, we had looked at, creating smaller fields. Do we need to get rid of a field? And what we were able to work out with Barton and LaJudas based on the updated testing is that the lower field closest to the intersection of Hillside and Buck Boulevard is going to be able to stay. It's going to get a little bit smaller, but it still will be a properly sized modified soccer field. And that's going to, I guess we could call that the lower field. And then what happened was the second field was supposed to be kind of in line at the same plane as that lower field. And what we were able to do was actually fill about 3 feet and keep that upper field as a full 225 by 360 foot soccer field, multi-use, of course, but I just identified as a soccer field because it's the largest playable soccer field for high school sports. And so basically what we've done is we've kind of, rather than having the fields all at one continuous plane where it was nice and at a 1% slope, we actually have 2 fields that will almost be terraced, but that they'll still be usable. We don't have to add in any more stormwater basins, ponds, wetlands, anything like that. Everything down there is going to be topsoil sodded. So while the lower field, with significant rainstorms, that'll primarily kind of be a holding area for those flooding events. It is designed that it will drain out. So it's not going to have any standing water in there at all. And then what we're also doing as part of this is an alternate is along Turtle Street, Hillside, and Buck Boulevard. We're going to be putting in a new 6-foot high chain link fence. We are going to do that as an alternate because that was something that was actually earmarked for a future phase when these fields were originally supposed to be scheduled for construction. But we thought, well, we're out there now, we're doing all the work, let's get a price, and if it's within reason, then we can get that, kind of finish off that area as well. Does that kind of make sense through that? Is everyone able to follow me? Okay. If we're able to get the revised graphic up and everyone's able to see it, you'll notice it by a red area, which is primarily the lower field, and then the green area is really going to be the upper field, where we're basically just adding, and everything has already kind of been cut down to that level, so we're not going to have to do any more cut in that area.
Dr. Calvin, do I have the ability to share, or would that screw up the format?
Well, I think so. Matt, can you stop your share so that Craig can share? Okay, go ahead, Craig.
Perfect. Thank you.
Sure.
I really think,
The difference in the elevation. Sorry, Craig.
no, it's okay.
What is the difference from the lower field to the upper field? Just the elevation difference?
It'll be about 2.5 feet. It varies.
Thanks.
But
I was just curious.
okay.
Thank you.
Yep. There we go.
Thank you, Craig.
I think it's important that everyone understand, this is kind of what Scott was trying to talk through. If you can highlight some of these bright red areas that are showing. Originally, when we came up with the project estimate of 5.6 million, we were considering that the entire rectangular site was going to have to be removed, treated, and handled as contaminated waste. And it was through subsequent testing and investigation work that Barton and Judas did that we've been able to identify specific areas. So we've drastically cut down the amount of soils that are going to need to be actually treated as hazardous contaminated material. With that will be a reduction in the budget thing. But as we're out to bid right now, and the construction manager is just saying that, you know, we're probably went from 5.6 to 3 million. We're hoping to do better than that when the come in and we do the final count with that going to be involved. But I just want to say, in the good. Anything you want to add on this before I switch over to Corey's drawing?
No, I think it's self-explanatory. Just the dark is the areas requiring, and then lighter red is the areas that need to be further. Those soils will get placed on the area, and the excess will be taken to the landfill. And then the soil covers all imported clean fill.
Great.
Craig, this drawing is probably fine, you know, to document as well, kind of what I'm showing, that, you know, the green area, it's almost a rectangle right there. That's your primary field. And then towards, you know, the bottom towards where Buck Boulevard and Hillside are, that's where you've got it's going to be a smaller, it won't be quite the size of Mini Wilbur. It is going to be a larger than that because it is a modified size field. And then there'll be about a 2.5 foot change. It's at a mowable slope, like a reasonable slope. So it's not like a drop off or anything like that. So.
Great.
All right. And with that, I will stop presenting.
Okay. Right. Okay.
Any questions on the design?
I had one question, Craig, and that was just regarding the barrier, the orange landscape fabric, and what added benefit that gives us as far as protection after the excavation. And will that be will that be laid down through the whole area?
Sure. So that's actually not really a protection issue. What it is, it's a definition issue for future utility work or anyone that has to go onto this field in the future. That's how you know you've got below or at the barrier between the soil cover and whatever remains on the property.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Tom, to give you a quick analogy, it'd be like when you're putting in electrical underground, you put about a foot above some red tape that is sensitive to the metal detectors. Same thing with gas lines. This is invisible. You won't have that, be able to do it with a wand, but it'll be a visible barrier that somebody's going down there. They know, whoa, stop.
Great, thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions we can help answer?
Great.
Okay.
All right.
Stay tuned.
All right. Well, I guess I want to say thank you to Craig and Corey and Scott and Peter and Jim. We've been working very diligently on this board, and as you heard them say tonight, things are moving in the right direction. So not only do we now have some funding coming to us after a year, but the part of this concern, we think it's going to be significantly lower in terms of cost. So as we continue to work at this, we'll be back to share more information. But at the cost that he was just sharing, and you remember there's state aid at about 85% or 80% or more. That brings the cost down significantly for the district, and we'll continue to work at this one step at a time. All right, and we apologize for that graphic. We will certainly share the updated graphic. We do have a site on our website. We have an area where we're sharing information from the project. We'll put the correct information up so that everyone sees it. And it looks like some of what we were looking for is up on the screen. Thank you, Matt, for getting that for us. I wasn't sure what was going on, but all right. Any other questions from the board tonight at all? Pretty good.
Thank you for your time.
Okay. All right, Craig and Corey and everybody, thank you. You're all set.
Thank you.
Matt, we can go on to the next screen there, Matt. All right, board. So tonight, separate now from the project, we'd like to now go over the preliminary program budget. And again, we do stress the word preliminary because this is subject to change. If there are things that you see in the budget that you have concerns with, just, let us know and we'll kind of work through that. And again, we will, as we move throughout the year, we'll continue to look at these numbers. And if there are things that need to be changed as the year goes along, we are certainly open to doing whatever the board would like to see. All right, Matt, go ahead. So again, as we do our budget, we have 4 real goals that we like to make sure are taking place. First, that the budget is flexible, meaning that it provides for flexibility within budget codes, that it is foolproof, and meaning that it provides for emergencies should they occur, that it's fiscally sound, not excessive to our taxpayers, and that it's flowing in that it has enough cash flow available in case the state withholds aid, as the year kind of moves forward. Okay, Matt? So just in terms of tonight, I'm going to provide the overall summary, and then Nancy and I will kind of move through all of the ins and outs. So tonight, in terms of the preliminary project or program budget, what we're looking at is in terms of salaries. Right now, we're looking at an increase of about $1,715,810,000. You can see where we came from with salaries from this year at $32 million, looking to go up by the 1.7 to 34 million for the next year. And again, this is preliminary because we are certainly under negotiations with a number of our units at this time. In terms of equipment costs basically are moving from 248 down to 246,000. That is because we have very little additional equipment needs at this time. So that's down by about $1,800. In terms of contractual, you will see a change of about $187,000, just over that, and that's coming down from 2.9 to 2.7, 37,661, and that's really because of contract busing through one of the companies that we work with. We won't need that contract busing for the next year, and also some of our utilities are down in that contractual area as well. With respect to BOCES, you will see a slight increase of $181,000, $181,859, going from 6.7 million up to over nearly 6.9 million. And with respect to BOCES, that's to cover the cost for driver's ed and summer school, and also CTE slots from last year. What happens is you actually, the way it works is you have a year where you put in the slots and then you pay for it in the next upcoming school year. So last year, I believe driver's ed and summer school were out of the budget. And this year, right now, we're projecting to put it in, should we be able to offer those opportunities. With respect to supplies and materials, so we're going up by about $9,000, just under $10,000, up to 9.983 in terms of supplies and materials for our schools. And then with respect to benefits, benefits, go up with salaries. So we are looking at an increase of $1,195,646. And again, that's just the benefits that would go up, of course, with the salaries. Keeping in mind, again, preliminary because we are certainly under negotiations at this time. Okay. All right, Nancy, go ahead.
Next slide, Nat. Thank you. So teaching regular school is going up 897,000 from 19.5 million to 20.4 million. That is all salary increases. incarcerated youth program for the students that are incarcerated is a flat budget. Art is flat, just so that the board knows, in order to save on cost. Other than salaries and some known increases over the budget, a lot of things remained flat. English has gone up slightly, $5,500. Language is flat, and physical education has gone up $730. Next slide, Matt.
Nancy, do you want to just tell them why the 5,000 is there? I think it's the 3 team leaders, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, there's a team lead. Those are for team leader fees. They're stipends.
Okay. All right, Matt.
Home and Careers is showing a slight decrease. If I saw in the budget that something hasn't been used over the last few years, that has been cut. Technology education has increased $10,600. In my meeting with Jamie Sykett on the middle school technology budget, there are 4 teachers there, and they did not have enough supplies to do 2 semesters projects. So he had asked for an increase at the middle school for their technology projects. Mathematics has gone up $360. And as you can see, music, science, and TV communications are all flat at the same dollar amount as last year. Social studies is also remaining the same. Reading is for all of our reading teachers. That $180,000 increase is all salary. Theater increase is also salary increases. Weight room has been placed in here. In our previous budgets, we've had a weight room supervisor over the summer. That was cut out of the budget last year. If our budget can sustain this year to bring that position back, it is in the budget. Textbooks are flat. We are waiting on the state aid runs in order to look at that line more closely. Special education is up $277,653. That is due to salaries and additional BOCES programming. Occupational education is up $19,460, also due to an increase in BOCES programming. Teaching special schools is up $198,832. This is also for BOCES services. School, library, and audiovisual is a decrease of $871. Computer assistant instruction is up $237,968. $150,000 of this amount is due to salary increases. The other $80,000 is due to BOCES increases. Guidance is up $40,526, and that is also for salary increases, as well as the health budget increase of $4,977, also for salary increases.
Right, Nancy. So just in terms of the teaching special schools, so that has BOCES programs. I think you mentioned that, Nancy, but also just for the board, it also has summer school programs included in that amount as well. Okay. All right. Great. Okay, Nancy.
Psychological services has increased $4,349. That is due to salary increases. Social work services has increased $80,973. This is not a true increase. What this is, one of our social workers were budgeted under a different function last year, which is why it looks like there's an increase, but we've just moved that person's position to the social work budget. Interscholastic athletics has increased $4,799. Transportation has decreased $94,469. This is due to gasoline and also some staffing. As Dr. Calvin said previously, we are still looking at some of our staff to make sure that we have everybody in the budget. It's a laborious task that we have to do to make sure that everyone has been included especially if we have subs in positions. We want to make sure that we've captured everyone. Athletic trips, this is for interscholastic travel, is flat. And summer school, we've put $20,750 in for that. Art trips and music trips are flat. And the garage, which is our transportation garage, is down $31,229. This is due to utility drop. And our contract transportation is also down $150,000. As Dr. Calvin said in the summary slide, we are not going to use our contract busing. We're going to do all of our busing in-house this year.
We have one question. Nancy?
Yes.
Yeah, I just have a question about when you say someone's a regular teacher, what distinguishes a regular teacher? Are specials teachers not considered regular teachers? Because I'm just getting a little confused about, we've got salaries in many different pockets.
Right. So all of our, unless they're special for high school, art, music, things like that, those are their stipends that are in there. All of the teachers are under regular teachers, whether they're for the elementary or the high school or middle school. Special education teachers are all under the special education budget.
Okay, and then my second question is about these, trips. A lot of these supplies have not been used this year. So do we roll that money over, or how does that work?
So if they have we did do a purchasing cutoff. That purchasing cutoff was January the 15th. Unless something has to do with health and safety, we won't approve those requisitions. So any money that has been unspent in this budget will roll to the fund balance for next year.
Okay, thank you.
Can I also just, in terms of supplies and materials, so we still do actually have some supplies and materials that are being used and from time to time have to be ordered. We do have sometimes parent packages for pickup that they have to actually, still come to grab because there are materials that kids are needing, even though we're online. So just so that everyone's clear, we are still using supplies and some materials, but it's as needed, basically. I hope that helps, Heather. Does that help? Okay, all right. Did I see Pam Dowd, I think, had her hand up there too? Hi, Pam.
Hi, thank you. Nancy, the art trips and music trips weren't taken out of the 2021 budget because we were already in pandemic, I think, at that point. So I'm curious as why they're still in the 2021 budget. I would have thought they would have. I thought that kind of stuff was removed because we knew we were in pandemic.
We didn't know when we were coming back from the pandemic, Pam. So we had to leave some things in the budget in the event that we came back. We couldn't cut everything out of the budget.
Thank you.
I think Jim had a question too.
Yeah, so is it possible, Matt, can you go back to the first table? Thank you, Matt. One more. Yeah. So, no, it was one bar back. Yes, thank you, Matt. So, Nancy, when we talk salaries here on that top line and the difference between an increase of 1.7 million, there's a number of times that you spoke of a category being the result of a salary increase. So, for example, Matt, if you go ahead 2, I think. Please.
One more, Matt.
One more forward, please. So you said the reading at 180,000 was an increase in mainly salary. Is that part of the salary that was in the first slide, or is that separate? So, in the first slide, when it says was a 1.7 increase in salary, and you said this reading was mainly because of salary, are those two the same?
Yes.
Okay, so am I to take it that the reading difference in salary is because we plan on hiring new people for reading? I mean,
no,
it's big.
No, there are no new positions entered into the budget, okay, except for 2 teaching assistants, which are going to be needed for special programs.
Okay, so that 180,000, when you said it here for reading, is just for reading people's salary.
Yes,
Salary increase. So we have a number of reading teachers across the district at all the different schools that we have there. Am I correct, Nancy? That's where we
that's
got.
correct.
Yeah.
There are a number of reading teachers. There also are some reading teachers that carry over to Carrie's federal budget as well.
Okay, and so that would be different than a theater teacher or a social studies teacher.
Correct.
Okay.
Does that answer your question? All set, Jim?
Yeah, I'm just a little confused about why some salaries are included in one category but not another. But you know, it may just be me seeing how I'm looking at it.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. Did we finish up the art there from before?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Kathleen, did you have a question there? Go ahead.
Yeah, on the music trip things, what exactly do those entail? Because doesn't the marching band, the Parents Association, fundraise and do all that? Is that for local competitions? And then
This is for Kathleen, NISMA, and all of those where we have students who are in band and orchestra go to their the concerts and things like that, and their travel for that.
Nancy, I think Jim's confused, and I'm a little confused why the reading teachers would not be in teacher salary. They're in the same union. So why did we separate them?
We break them all out according to their account code. So when you see the art department, when you see the music department, when you see teaching regular school, all of those are state mandated ST3, which is our reporting to New York State, the way we have to report them.
Okay, thanks.
So okay, I think Linda's got it. So each teacher has to go under a specific code. Each area has its own code, and you have to break it out so that it's very transparent to the public. Right? Okay. All right. Okay. Are we ready? Everybody okay to go on? All right, go ahead. ERS and TRS, Nancy?
ERS is our employee retirement system, and that has gone up to 18% this year. TRS is the teacher's retirement system, and we have budgeted that at 10% increase. Social Security is your Social Security and your Medicare. Workers' compensation, we've increased to $25,000. We have looked at the history over a 5-year period, and it seems that that is inching up. We have held it at $250,000 for the last few years. Life insurance is flat at $5,000. And unemployment insurance, you're going to see a large increase from $75,000 to $500,000. This is due to the COVID pandemic. We have had a lot of people who filed for unemployment, and we're working with the state. Hopefully we could reconcile that. We are in the same position as other school districts regarding our unemployment increases.
Okay. And just again, this is just preliminary, board. That amount might change as we kind of move forward, but this is just a preliminary number right now. Okay. All right.
Disability has gone down. We've received a better rate from one of our carriers. Hospital medical insurance is going up $143,305. That is due not only to potential medical increases, but also the Medicare reimbursement that we have for employees has also gone up. Dental insurance is going up $5,000. Our EAP and TSA reimbursement is going down $5,000. And interfund transfer for special programs, this is for summer school, is planned on going up $50,000.
Or I think we can bring it back to the board for more information or more discussion. Hi, Linda, did you have a question?
Typically, when we do the budget, if there are requests in various departments for more teachers or something they need, is that broken down so that we might see it, or there are no requests?
So if there were if there were additional requests, we would certainly put it into the budget and talk with the board about that. I would tell you that for the most part, with our principals at our buildings, most of them wanted their budgets to stay pretty flat. They just wanted to be able to maintain, for the most part, the people that they really needed. There are two additional, like teacher aide or teacher assistant positions, I think it was, Nancy, that people were looking for around special education. But for the most part, our principals pretty much wanted everything to stay flat. So that's why you see things for the most part staying flat, except for salaries or benefits that are going up.
Right. Okay. I know that, a bit ago, I know that, we had taken some things, Nancy, from the middle school over the years. You've been here long enough, and I wondered if they were requesting replacements for the things they had to give up.
There are some, wish list items, I would say.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking
for. Beth talked to me about. She did, but so what we say to our principals first is, let's start with the things you absolutely need, and then once we get that out, then we come back to those wish list items and bring those back before the board. Does that?
Yeah, that's what I was looking for. All right, thank you.
And Linda, what we can also do is when we actually get the state aid runs and see where we are financially in our revenue, we can, and if we do get additional money, we can bring back a list of what people had asked for, and then the board can decide on what it wants to put back, if anything.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that, because that's what I'm used to, that we, for a few years, had to cut some things. And if we can, I'd like to see them be able to get things back in that would benefit our students.
Heather, did you have a question there? I thought I saw your hand up there.
Yeah, my question's about the team leaders. I saw that we had an additional, I think it was the English department had a team leader. Is this an additional two questions. One is this an additional leader? They didn't have one and now they do. And then my second question is, do all departments now have team leaders? Because I know that's kind of been a bone of contention in the past.
Right. So the 3 team leaders are not new, if I remember correctly, Nancy?
They're not. And as I have to look through that, Heather, we're looking through all of the salaries again, just to make sure that we don't have a team leader in the wrong place. So my suspicion is that team leader should be somewhere else instead of in the English department, because there are already 2 there. So we're taking a look at that. And as far as all of the departments have team leaders, I don't believe every department has a team leader. We can get you in transmittal a list of all of the team leaders and where they're located.
Yeah, I think it was the maybe technology, Heidi, correct me if I'm wrong, and probably PE that are 2 areas that don't have team leaders, if I remember correctly.
Correct. Librarians, that was another area. Yep. We had talked a little bit about that last year, and we were on counselors. They don't have a separate team leader. We had talked about that a little bit last year during our budget building time, and just unfortunately, we weren't able to add them back in as we had initially anticipated, really talking that through.
Just in terms of, I know Linda's talking about the wish list. I do know that is something that I've received calls about in the past anyways, that, there seems to be some discrepancy between who gets team leaders and who doesn't. And so maybe there's a rationale behind that. I don't know, but that would be information that's valuable to have so that we can respond accordingly.
Sure. I will, we'll get that for the board. We'll share that in transmittal, and then we can come back and talk through that at our future budget meeting. Does that sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
Great. Pam, did you have another question there?
Well, I just wanted to say that I don't have any more questions regarding that right now because I can't wrap my head around everything that fast. So if I have any more, it's okay if I just email them, and then obviously we could discuss them at the next board meeting also.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kathleen, I don't know if I think your screen came up with your hand up. No, you're okay. Okay. Just want to make sure we got everybody. Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Again, board, this is really preliminary. So we're expecting, school aid runs. I think that there was some stuff that came from the governor just today. I know he was talking about some budget items and things today. So as we get more information, we'll bring that back. And any questions that you have, because this is your budget, we want to build it the way you want it to be built. So let us know concerns, and we'll certainly bring it back. Oh, I'm sorry, Tom. I didn't see your hand. Please forgive me. Did you have a question there, sir? Go ahead.
I didn't. It was just relative to our unemployment fund. Do we function differently than regular businesses in terms of our unemployment fund through the state?
We are self-insured, Tom.
On the unemployment line too, we're self-insured? Okay.
Yes.
That explains. I just was wondering why it would be that much of an increase. Understood. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else from the board at all? Nancy, anything else? You good? Okay. Thank you, Nancy. I appreciate it. Okay, board. The last portion here of my report tonight, we wanted to share with you just some follow-up information from our previous board meeting. You had some questions around instruction and comparing how people were doing, how our children were doing who were remote versus in person. We just wanted to kind of provide some follow-up on that. And then there's some information on social emotional learning. And then I'm going to end talking a little bit about just two final pieces of information around technology and also survey data. At our last meeting, I believe, Jim, it was you shared about maybe we should try to do a survey a little sooner than later, where I have the results of the surveys from our parents just as a follow-up. Okay, I'm going to turn this over to Carrie, and Dr. Duffy is with us tonight as well. Go right ahead.
And Heidi's here.
And Heidi. Hi, Heidi. Go.
Good evening. Next slide, please, Matt. Just a reminder, you had asked that I take the STAR data that we had, that I showed you from the September benchmark, and aggregate it with the two models we have of learning, which is in-person and remote learning. What you're seeing tonight is really truly the fall benchmark, where, if you remember, the STAR is an online program that all was delivered remotely. All students took it remote, regardless of whether they came in person or if they were remote. They took the STAR at home. It's about a 20-minute screening. So this is really screening data. It's not going to show any effect of instruction at this point because it was given in the early September to October. So what you're going to see is each individual school broken out between in-person and remote. And really, when you look at, there really is no obvious trend with this data at this point to dig into. When we see that Riley, to your left, that's early literacy. That is the STAR assessment that only is used in K1. And then the reading is all testing for grades 2 through 6. So this is how Riley panned out when I did aggregate the data of in-person versus remote for the STAR. You can see early literacy for the remote seems to be higher. And the reading, it's pretty close for the reading, 2 through 6 scores. Okay, next slide. And this is, again, the same thing with math. With math, the difference is that is a grade 1 through 6 testing. So this would be all the students in grades 1 through 6 that took the test. And again, the in-person is on your left and the remote on your right. And very close, again. Okay, next. This is Fitzhugh Park's data. And again, you can see with the early literacy one, it does outperform. It looks like the students outperform, but again, it's a screening benchmark. And then you can see the reading for grades 2 through 6. Pretty close. Next one. With math, same at Fitzhugh Park. They look close in terms of remote versus in-person. Next slide, Matt. And with the interesting one with KPS is that it looks like the early literacy is almost equal in both reading also. It looks like the difference with in-person versus remote are pretty close. And next one, Matt. And the math, very close. And next one. Layton is the one that kind of stands out as a little different. You can see that the early literacy with the remote learners is a drop. Whereas, again, the same with the reading, it looks like the remote learners has a slight drop. The other schools have the opposite trend. Okay, next, Matt. And with math, you can see the math, it doesn't mirror the reading. So we have an increase with the remote learners in math. Next. And here is Minetto, same picture of the early literacy with the remote learners, slight increase, and the remote learners in the reading, a slight increase. And then lastly, the math. Again, 1 through 6, we see a slight increase with the remote learners, with the benchmarking. Any questions on that? I know that's a lot of data to flip through, but you saw the data from last time.
I think
Linda had a question, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, Linda?
Yeah, Carrie, I don't know if I should even bring this up, but you know, when you're talking about reliability, validity on these tests, if kids are taking it remotely,
Yeah.
wouldn't there be a chance that they're getting support from whoever's there? So I'm wondering, because I see a lot of increase with remote, and I question that.
Well, Linda, everybody took the test remotely. The STAR test, everybody took from home. So there's no difference in how they took the test, the platform. They all.
No, but the place that they took it.
Yeah, right.
You know, when you're in school, you're not going to get any support at all. I'm just wondering if it's reliable. You know, if it's really.
No students took this in school. We did not utilize school in-person time to take this test. They were all given at home when they would have been a hybrid at home. And yes, we did talk to teachers about the support, but you can see from the data, I told you that last time I talked through this, you can see from the data when a student increases from 1% the year before up to 99%, you know there's a little support going on in the background. Whereas we also can see how long a student took the test also. So if a student takes a test, which is supposed to run about 20 minutes, in 2 minutes, we know there was no support and there was really no work being done. They just clicked through the buttons to get through the test. So yes, Linda, we do recognize that the data is not going to be as sound had it not been delivered and overseen directly at school. But the teachers were very creative. They had the kids all show their screens as they were taking the test. So there was some teacher oversight with most of them. I think a few of our little bunnies, the younger ones might have been coached a little just because it was her first time with the program. And they were at home and parents probably had to help them through the program. And they might have said, hey, click that one. I don't know that for a fact, but yes.
No, and it'll be interesting when we get them back in to see in comparison. You know, I mean, we did the best we could.
Correct.
With what we had, but right. I wanted to bring that to the surface too.
Absolutely, yes. Our teachers did. A few of them would write me and say, "Hey, Johnny went from 1 to 99%. Could you kind of deactivate his test, and I'll have him take it again?" So we did try to correct a few of them that we caught along the way. Okay, next slide, please. You had also asked that I then pull the data to look at 2020 versus 2019. So I tried to do this one in more in a pie chart so that we could look for all the buildings together. Again, fall early literacy. This is the K1. You can see, and again, Linda, this might be where your support might come into play. You can see in 2019 that there wasn't as many in the green as there are now. We had 41%. Oops, my computer's shutting down there. Okay. We had 41% in the green in 2019 when they were taking it in the school. And then this year we have 58%. So yes, that does prove your point for the little bunnies. It definitely proves your point for K1. Next slide. But here we have the 2 through 8. I included the middle school that's 8. And you can see it's pretty close. The comparison of 27% at and above for both years for this September benchmarking, which with the independence of the students taking the test, it was pretty closer to reliable than with the little bunnies, the little kids. Okay, so that's it for the data update that you asked of me, and now we'll go into the second part of the information. Oops, no, wait, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I have math. Sorry. Here's math. It's the same again. You can see we have a slight slippage with this year in math versus last year in math in our fall benchmarking. Okay.
Before you go on, Carrie, just want to make sure, board, any other questions around that data at all this evening? Any other questions? Heather, I think, and then Tom.
Yeah, I just had a question, and you may or may not know this, but is there a demographic difference between those who have opted in and opted out of remote learning?
I do not know that. I don't know if it might take a little bit to pull that data to figure it out, but we probably could get it. And I'll see if I could pull that. So that would go, I would put through transmittal.
Sure. And Heather, would you like that data by race or by socioeconomic status or in terms of demographic, female, male?
I think socioeconomic status would probably be is kind of what I'm thinking, but it would all be interesting. Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, we can work on that for you. Great. Tom?
Yeah. When will we get the next batch of testing in order to do comparison relative to where we're going?
I was hoping no one would ask that at this point. They are done with their benchmarking at the end of January. So they're working on January benchmarking at this moment. So that will be finished. I believe the last testing is the last week of January.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure. Any other questions from the board? Everybody okay? Okay. Go right ahead, Carrie.
Oh, Lisa, did you have one before we moved on?
Oh, Lisa?
Yeah, I guess this is actually maybe more a comment than a question, but I had been curious to see the 2019 data because our 2020 data was kind of like a little shocking to me. And seeing our 2019 data, it seems like, you know, it's consistent, which I think is good. And it's not good, but it shows that it's consistent. And I don't actually think our students had really so much of a slide because of COVID than they had before. But one of the things I would hope that we can do, you know, as a board and, you know, people who know more about, you know, primary and secondary education is to figure out like ways that we can try to improve this. And the one other thing that I would just as a, Carrie, I'm not asking you to do this because this would be a huge difference, but their STAR math and STAR reading scores might not be very closely correlated to what their reading and math scores are, right? Like their report card scores. Because not everybody does well with these standardized tests and all of that. But it maybe at some point, like it does not have to be in the next transmittal, but maybe, you know, at some point we could have some information about where our students are in terms of like, because they get graded on a 1 through 4 scale, like how many students in math or at least in elementary, I think they do, right? It's
only,
like
only till grade 4.
Oh, okay. Okay, so that makes it even more difficult. But I mean, like, I'm wondering, are 24 or 29% of our students actually at the end of the year at a 1 or a 2 or in, you know what I mean? Or like, are they doing better in classes than they are on these standardized kinds of tests?
Right. Yeah, so are the tests correlating to what we're seeing on the report cards?
Right.
Yes, good question. And I guess we'll have to look into that. That's a great question. we can look into the debt. That will take us a little time to really look through for each of the report cards, but that's a great
easy way to pull that. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Wait.
Any other questions?
Hang on.
Yeah, if I can real quick, it's just kind of piggybacking on both what Tom and Lisa said, because I think it's really important. As part of this data, I was really thinking about how are we doing this year, as in this academic year. And since this was from October data, this really doesn't talk a lot about what was happening for the majority of this year. But, and it's going to be interesting to see, as Tom mentioned, about new data. But I think it's really important to stress upon what Lisa just mentioned. This goes back now to our students' progression since March. And we've heard a lot of parents and talk about the fact that since we've been remote since March, have been having difficulties, worried about slippage, and I think that is something that everybody's been concerned about. And I think this data, as of October, talks to where our students really have not slipped since March. And I think it's kind of important to stress that, because I know the end of last year was of a concern, the beginning of this year is of a concern. So seeing how our students are progressing in relationship to last year at this time is important.
I would agree, totally agree. And I would say that Lisa's, her question is huge. It's a great question to see how do we correlate. So I think watching this and monitoring this and bringing this information back to the board, and Tom, we can bring back how are we, now that we've been in for a couple months, right? How do things look? We'll bring that back and continue to share that information and talk through that with the board. I think all of the points are really important, and I appreciate the feedback. So thank you. Kathleen, did you have something? Or I'm sorry?
Yeah, no, just with what Jim, but you've got to remember that what you're showing here is just math and ELA, and it only goes through, I mean, the first one was the little ones and through 8th grade. And I think a lot of the criticism in the community has been the high school kids falling behind. So I think that's a part of, Jim's.
In mind. Yes, that's certainly to be kept in mind as well. Yes. Heather, did you have something? I'm sorry.
Well, I'm actually just seeing that Linda's had her virtual hand up. I didn't know if that she wanted to say something.
I didn't know I had my hand up, but I will say something anyway. I'm still trying to figure this out. Thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Mathis, for helping us to see data and talking about academics. I'm thrilled.
Sure.
And so I guess just to piggyback on Kathleen's then, do we have a meaningful way of tracking our high school students? Besides grades, which are somewhat...
We would have to look at grades. I'm not sure, Carrie, in terms of testing. Do we do STAR at the middle school level, Heidi and Carrie?
Middle school, yes, it looks like.
Middle school, we utilize STAR as a screener.
But high school, are there any standardized test scores that you use for high school? I don't think so, right?
This is really for K or 1 through 8, but let me check to see what indicators might we want to use that will help us to answer those questions at the high school. Okay. We can look into that and see what we might use to help with that, and then come back to the board with that. Does that sound good? Okay, that's great. Okay, so to be continued. We got the piece around demographics from the demographic difference and opt-in and opt-out from Heather, and then Lisa talked to us about how do things relate in terms of what this data shows versus what kids are scored at in terms of on high school on their their report cards, and then Jim gave us some pieces to kind of continue to think through, and Kathleen also gave us some pieces around the high school. How's their progression going? So we'll look to see what kind of indicators we can use to come back and share information with the board around that. Okay. And I know Tom talked about looking from where we began to where we're at now. I'm trying to get it all, but I can assure you, board, I will go back and watch this whole video again and make sure we got all the points to bring back to you. Sounds good to everybody? Okay, we have one last piece here on social emotional learning. Go right ahead, Carrie.
Actually, next was, there had been a question about pacing guides, and the update on how instruction is flowing, knowing that our time has been reduced in in-person learning. So with that, we did create quarter one and quarter two pacing guides at the elementary K-6. I had a team of folks come and create pacing guides of what standards should be taught in the first semester. And we did find that when the team pulled back together in early January to continue on with the second semester of the pacing guides, that the teachers have slightly fallen behind on those prioritized standards in some situations. Some that they've kept up with, and some have slightly fallen behind, and that has to do with the nature of the class, the nature of those connections that might have been made with some of the classrooms. So yes, there is a slight creep that has to happen into quarter 3 and 4 with the standards, teaching of the standards. So they continue to prioritize those standards that need to be taught by the end of the year. And the team used important documents that New York State has released, bridging document, itemized test information, and also just their own knowledge of what standards need to be mastered at each grade level in K-6. And Heidi?
Yep, thank you. When we spoke to our 7-12 administrative teams and our team leaders, very similar to what you see at the elementary level, we have prioritized the curriculum in a way to provide a solid framework for our students of the essential skills. We have a bit of a concern because we still don't know yet about what our Regents exam assessments will be like, if at all, in June. I think we'll have some more information in the coming weeks or months. I did just see this morning an article about a call to perhaps make a decision earlier this year than came to us last year. I think that will be very helpful to teachers, because without that pressure of the concern about preparing students for a Regents exam that really cannot be modified given the pandemic. Regents exams take years to bring to fruition. They are creating that framework that's needed with a plan to add in a lot of the necessary details should we discover, in fact, that there will be an assessment given in June. So teachers are working to balance their prioritized instruction with those essential skills, knowing that they've had to back on some of the extra content that they would have supplemented the frameworks, if you will. And also at the secondary level, they took some time at the beginning of the year to build those community relationships. Because we are remote at the secondary level, it took a little bit more time at the beginning of the year than we typically would spend getting to know our students, building trusting relationships, working hard to make sure that kids felt comfortable with the technology that was being used 7-12. And that's kind of where we are there.
Okay, next.
The next slide.
I think you had some questions. Jim, did you have a question?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
So it was just because this was one of the things, as a teacher myself, I know how I pace through classes, especially if I've taught them a dozen times. So I got to say, this was one of the things that I brought up. And well, Carrie had mentioned that the K-6 was a little bit behind the normal pacing. Heidi, you mentioned that maybe some of the extras were not being included, but from the core curriculum, is the pacing, where is the pacing? Do we have an idea?
Yep, so it kind of depends on whether they're talking about a teacher of a Regents level course versus a non-Regents level course. As a biology teacher for nearly 15 years, I always would refer to my previous year's plan book. I would know about how much time I had, plus or minus a snow day here and there. Certainly, our secondary levels have lost out a little bit of instructional time just because of the schedule. Then a lot of our team leaders had mentioned that it does take kiddos a little bit of time, given some technical issues, getting maybe all 20 to 25 kids logged into the Google Classroom, loaded up any documents that they're going to review. That takes a little bit of time away from the instruction. So they have prioritized the frameworks, the core curriculum, and where they've had to scale back, if they've had to, in order to kind of keep pace if you're teaching a Regents level course, they've scaled back maybe some of those extra activities that would have been a little bit more illustrative, which is a shame. Certainly, those were the extra things that, kids really love. They see the application of the material and understand the connection better. But just until we know a little bit more about those Regents exams, I think teachers are really trying to balance not pushing ahead without the kids being ready to, but knowing that there currently is a Regents exam scheduled for June. Does that help a little bit, Jim?
Yeah, no, great, thank you, because I've taught Regents life science. Knowing how you've got to get to the test is an important aspect. And yes, doing those extra things are important, but the core content is
that's the necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Anyone else have questions about this piece? No? Okay. Matt, next slide, please.
Okay, and the next part was a question had come out about participation in grading. We have been really talking, the elementary principals, myself, have really been talking about how grading is happening during this very unusual time. So they did meet with their teachers, and we have been talking it through. We have a grading document in order to really kind of clarify the difference between grading a student on their learning versus their behavior. So truly, we've been working through with that. Learning is important, learning the standards. We have the standards set. Now, how is the student doing towards that standard? So that's the grades that's happening. It's not about the participation, in terms of they're not showing up or they're only showing up for part-time. It's about how is their learning happening. And that's truly what grading should be about, is how are they doing towards working towards that standard. Our teachers continue to make all efforts to engage all students, and that's the key with the participation, is making those engaging lessons so that students do want to participate.
Yeah, absolutely. And as a mirror to Carrie, she and I have shared a philosophy for years that grading should never be about a penalty. It should be a true reflection on the student's ability to demonstrate knowledge on those skills, standards, pieces that are definitely required, especially for consecutive coursework at the secondary level. I know that Mrs. Fierro and Mr. Wallace have had ongoing discussions with either their entire faculties or their team leaders regarding what participation looks like during a pandemic. I have seen a lot of various emails that have gone out to students in regards to making connections with teachers should you need additional help, time to make corrections, time to circle back to an assignment that you struggled with. A lot of that is happening on our Wednesdays, where students have the ability to meet directly with teachers and or complete the asynchronous kind of check and connect work that's going on. Information back from all of the various team leaders and departments that they really are working very collaboratively, either within the content area or across the grade level, to make sure that they're meeting the students' needs with the factor of the remote learning challenges that really are just imposed upon us, given our current situation. Any questions on that? I think before we move to the social emotional pieces, I know there were some concerns and questions about, how our social emotional team is working to create and support connections with our students.
Yep. I think you're good to go right ahead.
Okay, great. And Dr. Duffy is with us as he oversees a lot of the folks that are both directly involved in the social emotional learning, as well as gathered information from our principals and administrative teams.
Right.
Mr. Duffy?
Sure. Hello, everybody, and thanks for having me here tonight. First, if I fail to make eye contact, it's because I have two screens going on. Please make sure to stop me to ask any questions you have along the way. If any of the information I've given you here tonight, if you'd like more backup on it or one-on-one discussions or whatever, happy to facilitate that. Just give me a yell, okay? So I'm going to start just by talking a little about what is SEL. And as you well know, it stands for the social emotional learning. And that is effectively to apply knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show empathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. So it's really, really an important part of everything that we do and fits in nicely with our mission and vision statements. I did want to say SEL is not new to us in the district. We've had a push focus on SEL for at least the last 3 to 4 years. We spent a lot of time when we were developing our district's counseling plan, building SEL lessons into it. And so it's all been integrated into what we do. Matt, next slide, please. Thank you. Okay, so SEL during the pandemic. I mean, do we let it slide or is it even more important? Well, I think you can see by the quote here that it's next to impossible to expect teaching and learning to occur in a crisis without attending to our emotions. And I think that all of you can agree that this is kind of a crisis mode when we're talking about a pandemic. We haven't experienced this before, and for sure we want to make sure that we're doing everything we possibly can for our students. So let's move on to the next slide. One of the most important things that I wanted to stress tonight is our web of support. A lot of folks would think that we have our counselors and our counselors are responsible for everything that's SEL, and that's true. However, it is an actual web of support where we have our counselors, our school psychologists, our school social workers, our administrators, staff, teachers, and outside agencies. And I want to make sure I give a shout out to some of the outside agencies that we work with all the time. And so we have Chrissy Poro, who's our teen health educator. We have Farnham that comes in. We have our McKinney-Vento advocates. We have Dr. Noelle Lapointe, who is our McKinney-Vento clinician. We work with DSS. We work with the jail. We work with all kinds of folks, even outside of the school. And so this web of support that we try to put together is not something that is reliant on just one particular person, but it's everybody all together. Okay, so back, next slide. Okay, so as with most facets of education, the SEL supported levels, it's in that triangle, okay, that pyramid. And so you'll see that we have our levels that are, the first one is for everybody. These are the things we do for all students. Second level is what we do for some students. And the third level is what we do for a few students. And the reason for that is the level of need within that pyramid. Those at the bottom, we're giving that constant support for everybody. And then as the need increases, fortunately, the number of people that need that increased support is a smaller number, and that's what gives us our pyramid. Let me make sure that I've got all my points covered on that slide. Okay, Matt. So I'm going to give you an example of some things that we do at Tier 1. This by far is not an exhaustive list. I have such a tremendous amount of data and programs and notes and everything. But here's some of the things that we do in a nutshell. So as I said, the SEL lessons that we present are integrated into our curriculum by the counselors, by the social workers, by the teachers, by a lot of different individuals, which means that they will go into the classroom, that some of the teachers actually adopt the SEL lesson and integrate it into their lessons. So that's happening. K-12 SEL lessons, as I said, are in the district's counseling plan. And as all different lessons are not suitable for all different levels, grade levels, they're very, how do I want to say, they're very stacked, so that we have things that are appropriate for the kindergartners that wouldn't necessarily work at ninth grade, and so on and so forth. So everything is appropriate to the level of where they are grade-wise. It's also looked at and leveled to their need as well. Okay, so some of our counselors and social workers and others have very detailed and just excellent websites that they've put up for themselves and web pages. I was looking at one of the ones for Kingsford, Laura Riley, who was our counselor at Kingsford. She has a wonderful page. If you go there, she actually has 3 or 4 classrooms where students, according to their feelings, can go into a classroom, and there are activities for them to do in that classroom. If they want to just chill, there's a room where you can just chill, and there's things that they can do that will help them out with that. So that's just one example. A lot of people are doing a lot of different things. One-on-one counseling for all students. When we sat down and we wrote our counseling plan for the district, it was a 1.5-year process. We had information come down from the state. We put it all together, and part of that was a requirement that all counselors meet with all students from grade 6 to 12 minimally one time a year in a one-on-one situation. And so it is happening, and it happens, I want to say right now, haphazardly. I'm not sure what schedules they're looking at and how they're getting in touch with the different students that are involved. But as they meet, they have to ask 3 questions. And one is about their learning, one is about their futures, what they want to do, and one is specifically about their social emotional learning and what things might be in their way, what things they want to celebrate, those kinds of things. And so that is a requirement, as I said, for all of our counselors from 6 through 12. They send out a tremendous amount of email alerts. Now, I asked them for samples, and I got roughly 50 from the last couple months just from the high school of different email blasts that they send out for all students or maybe just a specific grade. It ranges from anywhere from there's a college visit, or how do I do my FAFSA, to these surveys that we just sent out, and ask them, what do you think? How are you doing? Are there issues that we can address? Those things. All the counselors have office hours where if you call, maybe one counselor will have from 11 to 12 every day that they're just there. If somebody wants to pop on the computer or somebody wants to give them a call, they're sitting in their office doing other things, but they are available to take those calls and address those concerns. I was mistaken when I put down semester survey 9 through 12. It's actually a quarterly survey. It is sent out at the end of every quarter. Another one just went out, I think, last week. And that survey asks them pretty much, how are you doing? What are the things we can help you with? And just gives them a lot of information if they want to get in touch with us. Check and Connect, that's something that's done 7 through 12. And that is, as you probably have guessed from the name, where our counselors, our teachers, everybody connects with students. So how does that happen? Well, I was looking at some of the spreadsheets that are done at the high school as a means of maintaining continuity in how we're contacting people. It was absolutely mind-boggling. I was at this spreadsheet, like I said, I was looking at is by the grade level, and then it's by the concern of, is this student failing a course? Is the student not attending? Is the student failing a course and not attending? So it's broken out in a lot of different ways. And then at the end, in the notes section, they put down they've contacted this person and what the follow-up is on that. And Wellness Wednesdays, again, my apologies for that. That should be 7 through 12. That's done by the social workers at the high school, and it's also done by the crew at the middle school. And that is after school, and it is strictly social for kids that want to connect, that are feeling out of place, disconnected, disenfranchised. That's something especially for them. Okay, so that's tier 1. And like I said, not an exhaustive list. So after I wrote that entire list, I thought I better pare these other 2 down. So tier 2, attendance check-in. Okay, so what we do is every time somebody is absent, we call. We call to make sure that the child is okay. And we also take a look and see how many times they've been absent. And that will move that person either up or down on our pyramid to look at what kind of interventions we need to put in place for that child. Same thing is done for grades. We look and see where a child is with grades. And we do a call. If they're reducing in their grades, we give them a call. And so there's a constant check there. Attendance and grade is what I was telling you about too, is another area where they check. Again, it's on a spreadsheet where they can go through, follow through, and make sure they connect with those folks. Individual and group counseling sessions are things that are done virtually right now, K-12. And so you got to see, for those of you who are old enough to remember the old Ed Sullivan show where somebody would run and spin the plates and they'd get them all going and then they'd have to run back to the other end and spin the plate again before it starts to wobble and fall. That's kind of what the staff does, because we have to make sure that we are hitting all those different areas and that we're keeping them all going. Okay, Matt? Okay, so tier 3. Tier 3 are for individual specific meetings with students and families. So they've moved up into the tier where we have the most concern about them. We have the mental health clinic, which is over at FITU. They are still doing their contacts with students. It's now virtually. We're doing porch visits because home visits with the pandemic, not recommended, obviously. But a lot of our counselors and social workers have expressed that they have the need to actually put eyes on the student. And so we've come up with a term, porch visits. And individual counseling meetings. As I said, if there's a student and we find that they are in a lot of need or there's crisis, they might be meeting with them 2 or 3 times a week virtually to address their issues. Now, as I was talking about that web, one of the things I wanted to make sure to say is that we have all these different entities and all these different people, and they're all working together. It's the teachers, it's the administrators, social workers, psychologists, guidance counselors, everybody. And in that web, we still have to make sure that we are maintaining confidentiality, that we have consent to talk to the other people. And so while we talk, we still have to make sure that we're doing it and we're compliant in all ways before those conversations take place. Matt. Okay, so I wanted to sum this up with something the World Health Organization just put out. Keeping each other safe and connected is everybody's responsibility. Again, I just have to drive back to the fact that there are so many more people involved in what's going on supporting social emotional learning than simply the counselors or the social workers. Again, I'm going to ask for questions, but please, if you have anything specific or you'd like to meet one-on-one and talk about and look at some of the backup I have, I'd love to do that. We have tons of data we could look at. So just ask if there's any questions at this point.
I just had a suggestion, actually, only because I have 2 kids in high school, and it's about regarding the email blasts. I think there becomes this like a numbness to it because it's great, the communication and to make sure the communication is flowing, but sometimes you're getting information that doesn't even pertain to you. So pretty soon you start to ignore it, if you know what I'm saying. So I'm wondering if we can be more targeted with those email blasts when it comes to targeting, whoever really needs to get that particular information, as opposed to just kind of everybody getting all of the same information.
And as I was looking that over, I was seeing that, if they're talking about FAFSA, it's going to juniors and seniors and not going to freshmen and sophomores. So I think they're doing that kind of thing, but I think you're right in that specific targeting would probably be more beneficial, and they pay more attention to it. You're right.
Well, I think too, just because, especially right now, I think in an average year it might feel differently, but especially now when that is one of the pieces that we're saying is a check, this is we're connecting. If that's really a connection, it's got to feel like a connection. And so if you just feel like you're, on a mass list and you're just getting bombarded with information, it really isn't a connection. It's just getting bombarded with information. I hope.
I'm sorry. Sure.
We'll take it.
One of the things I failed to mention was the Connect with 9 that's in place at the high school right now, and that, faculty and staff have a list of 9 students that they are connecting with personally. They're rolling that out just to make sure, because there's probably kids that we're missing that you wouldn't think need some help, but until you reach out individually and talk to them and see what's going on, you would never know that. And
yeah,
so
that particular effort is, I think, very effective. Sure. I probably have 2 kids that would not be caught in a radar, and they have appreciated the one-on-one connection. So,
super.
That I think that is an effective technique.
Well, we're trying. Great. Any questions?
Heather, I missed what you said in the beginning. Yeah, Heather, I missed what you said in the beginning. You kind of cut out. But I agree with you. I think the blasts and the mass emails are not what is working. I mean, this sounds great, but that hasn't been my experience with my high schooler. And I think that's one of the things that's most frustrating, because and my high schoolers' friends, parents and kids, and I mean, I'm living it. And that's what I mean. How many of these meetings have I said I'm worried about these kids' emotional well-being? Almost every single meeting I've said it, and I've just it's very. You can send out a mass email, hey, if there's a concern, message me. Right. But unless it's personal, like others.
Well, okay, so you've frozen up a little bit, but
and it wasn't until a week ago where one of my son's teachers came back from maternity leave. So, and said, I'm going to connect with you. That it actually felt like he was being paid attention to, because struggling grades, all of that, this has not been my experience.
Sure. Okay. Yes, and it's my hopes that with our Connect with 9, and they are meeting individually with students, and the individual meeting they have to do per regulation, that at least will open that door a little bit. So if there are kids that are, let's say, suffering in silence, let's call it that, it does open the door enough for them to say, hey, you know what, I do need some help. And as an aside, when we got these surveys back, I think we got about 300 of the surveys back from last week so far. And there were a few people that did indicate that they needed help, and they were addressed as soon as they came in. So we're doing a lot of things. Probably the most difficult thing is the thing that you're talking about, and that is identifying the ones that don't necessarily look like they need the help. Agreed.
Okay. I think Pam were you saying something? Are you all set, Pam? I thought maybe I saw you saying something. Okay.
I just think they all need help. We all need help. I don't think there's a person out there that's gone through this pandemic. Everybody needs help. And I think that that's a bad assumption, that we think everyone is okay. And truly none of us are. We're all living through this
We are
craziness.
not making that assumption. We know.
Yeah. So I just be careful because it's suffering in silence that we're going to miss.
Thing. We know about the ones who are telling us. It's how do we open the door to get the ones that aren't telling us?
Absolutely. All right. Bob, thank you. Linda, did you want to say something?
Yeah, Bob, thank you so much for this presentation. I thought it was very informative, and I hope a lot of parents were listening, because it does demonstrate that we do have things in place and that we're willing to take feedback and to reflect on things and make them even better. So thank you so much.
One of the things I enjoy most is talking to parents who have concerns. So if any of you want to pass it along to any of your friends that have concerns, please ask them to call me. I'd love to sit down and talk with them.
Great. Thank you, Bob.
Sure.
Kathleen, was there anything else that you had? I'm sorry. I thought maybe you were trying to say something else.
No, just to follow up what Pam said, it's that personal connection. I mean, these kids aren't getting it. The high school, middle school kids are not getting that personal connection that they get typically when they're in class, when they're seeing teachers every day. And I agree with a lot of the feedback that we got about getting these kids back in person. Other districts are doing it. We need to do it as soon as possible.
All right. So with that said, thank you, Bob. We
Thank you,
appreciate your time. Have a good night. And board, I'm sorry, Jim, did you have a question? Go ahead.
I just got to follow up with that, saying that I completely agree. There are groups of people that absolutely need help. We've been talking about that, but I don't want to go through this discussion without also saying that there are some kids and teachers that are making it through this academically, not socially the same way. But I have seen personally, and from people I know, there are middle and high school teachers out there who are going above and beyond to connect to our students. So while there is a bell-shaped curve to everything in life, and there are absolutely students that need more, I don't want to discount and let go of the fact that there are some of our teachers, I'd say a good majority of our teachers, who are going above and beyond to connect to our students. It isn't the same being in person. I know that. I get that. But to discount what they're doing, I don't want to do that. I want to make sure that's acknowledged.
Thank you.
And Jim, I wasn't discounting anything. I'm just saying this has been my experience, and I'm sharing my experience, which I could share so much more, but I'm not going to because it's a private issue also.
No, and I get that, and I respect that absolutely, and that's 100% acknowledged. I just wanted to also make sure to say that again, it's not all doom and gloom, and where it is, we need to help more. We need to do more, but there are students succeeding. There are teachers going out of their way. So I completely agree, Kathleen. I'm not trying to say you discounted it. I'm just trying to maybe silver lining a little bit. That's it.
Again, if any of you would like to sit down and talk, I'd love to have it. Thank you.
Bob. Thank you. Bob, we're all set.
Thank you,
Heather,
Jim. And yes, what you said, everybody needs it. And that's, all the kids are needing this.
Yep. Absolutely.
all right. Heather, I'm sorry. Was there anything else before I go on? Are you all set?
I think I'm all set. Everything's been said.
All right. Thank you. Bob, you're all set for this evening.
Thank you, Bob.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, folks.
So, board, just to end here, to wrap this up a little bit, just go ahead, Matt, please, to the next slide. Just wanted to, again, follow up with a technology update, just to let you know. As you know, all of the technology that we need has been ordered. In terms of the pandemic, it continues to affect our delivery. We have a big order that's like nearly over 2,000 computers that we're still waiting on. I want you to know that those orders, some of them were put in, and we had some orders prior to June that we put in. We had some that were put in April and September, or excuse me, August and September. And we're still waiting. Our biggest order, we have heard that there's a order in front of us that has 3,200 computers, And so once that order is knocked out, we're the next ones on the list, basically. We have been getting some smaller orders in. In fact, we just got an order, I believe, today, if I remember correctly, with over 100 computers. One of the things that we are facing that continues to be a concern for us is trying to keep up with the demand. So we have children who continue to register every day, or every week, rather. And so when they come in, it's trying to find some kind of a technology piece to help them with, or else having them hold until we can find them. I'm happy to say that really as of today, all of our kids, when we got our order again today, all of those were shipped out and they go right to the hands of our kids or right to the hands of those schools, so that way they can get those pieces out and distributed. Our goal is as soon as we get everything in, and we are certainly checking every single week and every other day, so as we get them in, we're going to start trading things out. So our Apple computers, the little Apple iPods, we're going to trade those for Chromebooks. And we'll kind of go back and forth basically until we get all those done. And then we have districts who've allowed us to borrow items. We're going to give their items back to them, laptops and some of their computers. And our goal is, again, to replenish where we need to and kind of go from there. So how are things working with the technology across the board? So I'd say there's a mix, right? Some of our homes are doing extremely well. People are on, they understand what they need to do. They now have the technology in place and they're moving forward. Some of our homes have children, or some of our families that are really kind of novice to using the technology, and some of them are having challenges. What's been very good and helpful this year is that we do have help desks. We do have people on hand to help educate and support our families around the technology needs. We actually have a series of informational videos. We have people that, it's like a hotline. They call them up, they tell them what the issue is, and they walk them right through the issue. And that's helped us this year to navigate through many of the challenges. So, is it perfect? I would say no, but I would say I don't think there's any district that has it perfect. But we're doing much better than I would say we were this time last year. Do we have work to do? We do, and we're continuing to do that. We're also supporting our teachers and staff with professional development. Every week there's something that people might need, and we have people on hand to help and support the staff. So I just wanted to share with you around that. And then Matt, the last slide I wanted to share is around just the survey information that's out. So I think, Jim, at our last meeting, you mentioned maybe surveying a little bit faster for some of our folks. I think we were already working on that. So just to let you know, we did survey our people, our elementary folks, and our middle school and our high school folks to see who wanted what, basically. So at the elementary level, just this past, just this week here, we had our survey close at 559 people who answered the survey. Of that group, 94% of our parents who currently, have certain programs in place, whether it's in person or out of person, said, I want my program to stay the same. I either want them to come in like they've been doing or stay at home. 33 of our parents, or 33 of our parents responded and said that 6%, I would like to change to something a little bit different. And it was a mix. It was almost half and half. Some said, hey, I want to bring my kids in. Some said, I'd like to have my kids kind of go remote. So there really wasn't a lot of change with respect to what's happening. 94% are saying, keep it as it is. At the middle school, so we saw some change from when we started in the fall. And not a lot of change, actually. So at the beginning of the year, when we talked about reopening, 68% of our parents said, I'd like to have hybrid. 32% said, I want 100% virtual. And then in December and January, we began to survey so we could plan for the reopening. We saw 65% who wanted actually the hybrid, and then 35% said, I want 100% virtual. So we closed their portal there just on the 18th, and we got the final data from them. And that had 275 respondents. And by the way, keep in mind that some of our parents have more than one child at the middle school. But we had 275 people who responded, and 62% said, I want the hybrid option. And then 38% said, I want 100% virtual. So, we went from 68 to 62, but that's really not a lot of movement there, to be honest with you. And then lastly, at the high school, we had 646 folks who completed their recent survey of this past week. And of that survey, 64.1%, 414 of our families said, I want the hybrid option for my high schooler. And 35.9%, 232 of our folks said, I want 100% virtual. So really, if you look at it across the board, nearly 60 to 70% of our families are saying, I'd like to be in person for instruction. And we are planning accordingly with that data in mind. Pam, go ahead. Did you have a question?
But yeah, so in the high school, the percentage of completed surveys is little more than maybe half the population.
Mm-hmm.
Is that correct?
Yes, keeping in mind
Roughly?
with the caveat that some of our parents have more than one child at the high school. They may have a
Correct.
ninth grader and a 12th grader. So that sometimes plays into this.
So it's more than half of the parents.
Yeah.
Did it go to the parents?
Parents.
Or the kids?
To the parents.
Okay.
My voice.
Sorry for my confusion. I think I get everything Jupiter Ed that Gretchen gets, or so I don't ever know if it's really to me or to her. I replied to it, but in the middle school,
Sweeney, I believe this
the same. So it's more than half, roughly, the parents replying.
Mm-hmm. That is correct. Ms. Sweeney, am I correct on that? Dr. Sweeney?
Yes, so the middle school is currently, I believe it wrapped up last week, and then they were going to make some efforts to do some individual phone calls to parents who had not had a chance to reply. Mm-hmm. The high school is still in the midst of their survey period. They'll be sending out some reminders to parents. Is that not what you were asking me, Dr. Calvin?
No, the high school, I spoke with Pat this morning. My understanding is their survey has closed.
Okay, so then they're doing the follow-ups perhaps this week?
Yes. Yes. So this should have gone out to parents. And so one thing that's clear from this data is that more than half of our parents want an in-person option. That's very clear to us. And we're moving in that direction.
Yes,
Kathleen,
agreed. And I believe it went out through Jupiter Grades. So Heather, if for some reason you don't think you recall getting it, if you could just reach out to the high school main office and make sure that your email is in the Jupiter Grades for the parent.
There was some confusion because it did go to the students. Both my boys got it, and I've heard of other students getting it. The students were confused if they were supposed to fill it out. And so we may have some issues there if students filled it out as opposed to parents, is all I'm saying. And of course, I do think you're going to have a large majority of students wanting to go back. So that was my only, there may be some error there.
Okay.
Exactly. And that's why I was raising my hand as well, because it didn't go to me, to my Jupiter Grades email. It went to Nathan, and it was geared to him, not to a parent. So there's a discrepancy there so I didn't fill it out because I was like, oh, well, another one's got to be coming. And I never got one.
Sure. We'll check on that. Definitely.
Yes, that will be a check first thing in the morning. We'll double check. And if there was some difficulty with that survey, then we'll have the principal and the team put it back out again to make sure that we get all of our feedback from parents. We will double check that for sure. Okay. Kathleen, did you have another question? I see it said your hand was raised.
No, that's me. So when we go back to the hybrid, parents will still have the option to keep their children home for virtual.
Mm-hmm. Yes, if you want to go 100%, you can stay 100% virtual. Yes, absolutely. We'll have that option. Yes. And I would say at our next board meeting, we should be back with the middle school, the ins and outs of the plan. I believe that we'll be closer. We'll be able to share with you where we're at, and we'll kind of move from there. So again, we've got 30 people working with the middle school plan, parents, teachers, students, a variety of folks who are working on that. And we'll come back with more information at that next board meeting.
I think, too, when you report the data and you're doing percentages, when you're saying a certain percentage, that's a percentage of respondents, not percentage of the parent population. So I think that's a little misleading because I think it's when you say only half, responded and then only 64% of half, you know what I mean? Now it's not 64% of the whole student body, parents.
Right. I'm not sure if I said only half responded. I think I said that this is the number of people that responded, and some of them had more than one child in the school, just to clarify.
But I'm saying, is it 64% of the parent body, or is it of the respondents?
Of the respondents.
Because if you add evidence, so maybe it might be more helpful to see of the, how many people, could have responded. So you get just a better example of what the response was and how many people in the whole population want it or don't want it.
Okay, we can certainly share with you the number of respondents. We can do that, Heather. Absolutely, and for the whole board. Absolutely. Okay, Point well taken. Okay, board, any other questions on that survey information? I think the big point is to let you know we're moving in that direction, and we're moving as quickly as we can. And we again ask our community to continue to be patient with us and partner with us as we move forward. And we will be back with more information and more PR to come for our parents to keep them in the loop as to what's happening. All right, so our purpose tonight was really to make sure that we followed up with the board, that we gave you all the information around the emergency project, that we shared with you what was happening in terms of the budget process, that we're moving through the preliminary information. And then the board had questions around student data, how are kids doing with remote versus learning. You asked about pacing information, student participation, and then social and emotional learning. And we wanted to make sure that we provided that follow-up information for the board this evening. All right, are there any other questions? Because if you're all set, I'm all done. Thank you. You're on mute, Karen. You're welcome.
Thank you. Karen. Next is the consent agenda, minutes of the special board meeting of January 8th, 2021, minutes of the regular board meeting of January 5th, 2021, revised minutes of the regular board meeting of December 15th, 2020, special education board report of January 19th, 2021, treasurer's report of December 2020, Oswego Middle School and Oswego High School extra classroom activities report, December 2020, and the budget status report, December 2020. If I could have a motion, please.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
Second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, I had a question, Nancy, on the budget status report, and it talks about the amount of state aid that was less than last December. Was that because we got less state aid this December than we were supposed to get, or it was just less than last year's allotment? You're on mute. I'm sorry.
I apologize. I don't have that information right in front of me, Tom, but I'll get you that information and transmittal.
Okay, great. I just wanted to know where we were relative. I know the first 2 months when they held back some of the state aid, I just want to know if this was continuing to happen or not.
I can tell you it is.
Okay, good. So that's something we have to consider in our budgeting. Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Next is personnel with Dr. Sweeney.
A, we have a professional staff retirement, Sari Spedding at Minetto. Whereas Sari Spedding has served the students and staff of the school district as a teaching assistant for the period April 22nd, 2000 to the present, and has been a most responsible, conscientious, and dedicated staff member in service to the district. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the members of the Board of Education of the Oswego City School District hereby acknowledge the faithful service of Ms. Spedding upon accepting her resignation for the purpose of retirement effective July 1, 2021, and we express all grateful appreciation to her. Karen, can you do that one alone?
Yes. Motion, please.
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, we have B, C, and D. B is a teacher tenure, Melissa Russell, literary specialist at the middle school, effective 1/30/21. C is a professional staff recommendation for Casey Smith, English teacher at the high school. She will extend her child rearing leave through the end of the month, 1/29/21. And D is a professional staff recommendation probationary appointment for Evan Shirtliff, special education at the high school, replacing a recent resignation.
Motion?
Move it.
Second? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Next, we have our support staff recommendations. E, a leave of absence for Joshua Crayons, who's serving in a second probationary period, school monitor part-time at the middle school. F, 2, support staff recommendations for probationary appointments now that our folks have been successful in their CSE, civil service exams. Kim Patrick, account clerk typist at the Ed Center. Matt Schneider, senior land tech for the technology department. G, support staff recommendation, a permanent appointment for folks who have completed their probationary period. John Altman, HVAC mechanic. Evelyn Thurlow Blair, custodian, and Carrie Tripp, senior typist. H, a support staff recommendation, a discontinuation of provisional employment, Angela Miller, typist at the Education Center. And then I, our substitute and temporary employee batch.
Resolutions E through I. Could I have a motion, please?
Move it.
Second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Next is Finance with Nancy Squires.
A is a donation to Kingsford Park School of a bell set from an anonymous donor valued at $100. B is the Bing Cuse resolution for the settlement of the tax certiorari with a reduction of assessment from $940,000 to $850,000 and a waiver of all refunds. C is the extra classroom activity audit for the board's approval. D is the ECA corrective action plan for that report where there was 1 finding and 5 corrected findings from the previous year. E is our single audit report with no findings. That is for all of our federal programs. F is our annual risk assessment through Bonadio, of which the audit committee has suggested that payroll and capital asset testing be done this year.
Resolutions A through F. Could I have a motion?
Move it.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Next is the student representative discussion. Zeta?
Nothing for me tonight.
Okay. Then we'll move to the items from the board. Would any board members have any items tonight?
Can I just thank everybody for all their hard work? Administrators, teachers, faculty, staff, because we can't do it without you. Thank you all so very much.
I just wanted to bring up something, and I spoke to Heather about it before, but in light of everything that's going on, and I don't think we should be sitting and not talking about it in terms of things that happened to the Capitol and where we are, relative to civics being taught in the school and where we are relative to that. And then also in light of truth through the internet and fact through the internet, and that we would offer some sort of class that would help guide students to be able to look at the internet and look at social media and be able to discern fact from fiction and be able to look at things for the holistic view. So it was just something that came up, and I think it's our responsibility to help help educate the students to look at this thing completely and comprehensively. So I just had that suggestion.
And Tom, I actually spoke with Dr. Kelvin about your suggestion, and he was thinking that he could have a representative from the department that teaches civics come and talk to us about what they teach and how they're dealing with the current events. Would that be something everybody would be interested in?
Yes.
Okay.
I do think it's a teaching moment that we should not lose sight of, and it's the opportunity it presents.
We agree. Totally agree, Tom. Yes.
Absolutely. Jim, did you want to speak to the issue you had, or do you want me to just summarize it?
No, I can speak to it. And I guess it actually goes upon what Tom just said. It's about getting all of the facts out there and trying to be as transparent as possible. There was an editorial put out, as we've alluded to earlier in the meeting today, that I think correctly states that there are a lot of students and parents that would like to get back hybrid with middle and high school. And I understand that, and I agree with that. But there were a number of things in that article that were just not completely accurate, that while not false necessarily, were not the full story. And so as a board, one of the things that I shared with Heather that I'm concerned about is the fact that not a lot of people have the time or effort to listen to these meetings. The local media does not always cover every aspect of what we're doing. It's impossible. They can't do it, right? But when people choose to post editorials that are not fact-checked, I wonder as a board what we should be thinking about or talking about, possibly even outside of our meeting. I don't know whether it's a response from the board to the paper or from the superintendent to the paper, but it strikes me that if people aren't watching our meetings and there is partial information out there, what can we do to better inform the public as a whole? We can send things through our listservs so that parents and guardians know, but that doesn't reach the general public the way the newspaper does. And being new to the board and not having as much experience as others, I guess I was just kind of wondering as a group how we would like to respond to some things of this nature.
So I know, Jim, it can be very tricky. Over the years, we have had to deal with a number of issues. And sometimes if you respond, it exacerbates in a negative way. Maybe if we just responded with the facts, where we're at, like we did tonight, where we're at and what we've done. But we have to be really, really careful. Because you don't want to get into a media back and forth with people that might be upset because they don't have the facts or all the facts. So I don't know. I guess I would ask Dr. Mathis for his experience and background in dealing with. And the other thing I don't like, and I'm going to say it, is that when someone gives us their opinion, I wish it were just their opinion and not saying that the community agrees with them, because that's not always the case. And that was a bit frustrating for me because I have a grandchild in school and he's in his senior year and I want him back in school and I want him to go to his prom and do those things. So I guess I'm going to defer to Mathis and best way to approach this.
Dr. Calvin?
Do you want to have Tom go first? I saw his hand up, and then I can respond.
Sorry.
Okay.
The only thing I was going to say, and I agree with you, Linda. The facts. Just the facts. Just the facts. I can't say any better. That the truth and the facts. We don't have to get into back and forth, and we don't. The way we present it is just very factually. This is what's been done. This is the timeline, or whatever points you're trying to make. But there's no spin. There's no time to dissuade. It's like, here's what you said. Here what the facts are, and you can go and look it up on previous meetings if you'd like to. But to me, I think that's the best way to do it. And that's what we need more of. So. Sorry.
Dr. Calvin?
I would totally agree. I would just to back up a little bit, just to be clear, first of all, all of our meetings, we have a number of reporters who actually go on and watch our meetings, and they do a great job with trying to really outline everything that's occurred in our board meetings. Some of them are almost like what do you call it? They know how to, they can record every single word pretty much that is said. They do a great job with that. I appreciate all their hard work and efforts that they do with that. We have a PR team also through BOCES who helps us to put information out. And I think that certainly is those two connections are really important. But I also think what's really important is reaching out and talking to folks. So I remain very open. When I hear of something that may not be quite right, what I often try to do, my approach is to reach out directly to those folks who have maybe said the information or put it out there and try to correct the information and share and hear and learn from perspectives. I found that the answer is often communicating and talking and then responding, right? We build trust by when people share with us information and we promise we're going to do something, it's doing it. And so we work diligently in doing those kinds of things. So my approach would be certainly continue with the PR that we are doing. And then I personally, if it's okay, I talk with the board often, but I like to reach directly out to people and try to really come to some, I try to seek to understand what the issues are and provide, as Tom said, the facts wherever possible in a non-confrontational way and just continue to work through the issues and resolve the concern. This issue with respect to our schools reopening, it is a concern, not just for us, but again, as I said, across our region. Today I spoke with 3 other superintendents in our region, some as big as we are, some smaller than we are. And we are all having the same exact challenges and the same conversations in our community. Everyone is trying to reopen, but unfortunately the pandemic has taken us for a curve and it takes a little time to get us where we need to get to. All of us have one thing in common though. We continue to remain open, to continue to provide information, to share everything and work through these matters as diligently as we can. So I guess I said a bunch of things, but I'm willing to continue to work with the PR and then reach out personally and work with people. And I think that's where maybe that might help us and support us there.
And Dr. Kellen, I know you've done that a lot, and we do appreciate that very much, actually. So are there any other items from the board? I guess I didn't want Zeta to get off that easy because we have had some comments about seniors and seniors kind of feeling slighted. And I just was wondering if you could represent your class a little bit and kind of give us a report, the board report, as to how people are feeling and thinking about their senior year so far.
I think it goes without saying that, of course, my opinion is not representative of all students by any means, because I feel sometimes that I've had a different experience when it comes to online learning. Particularly for me, I feel like I've adjusted particularly well, but I definitely have heard that a lot of students are struggling, and a lot of teachers are struggling to learn how to, make this a better experience for kids. And, I've seen a lot of, when it comes to senior activities, our senior class advisor, Mrs. Palmatesso, and our class officers have done a lot of work when it comes to trying to figure out what we can do. And because, nothing can really be the same. No events it just wouldn't be the same if you tried to accommodate them to online learning. But we're trying to make new events and new things that particularly seniors can participate in. So that's definitely something that students should be on the lookout for. But yeah, I guess that's mostly where we're at right now.
Thank you.
Would there be any other items from the board tonight? Next is executive session. If I could have a motion for the board to move to executive session for reasons of negotiations and the employment history of a certain person.
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
Everybody wants to get in.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? You may move to executive session.
And Karen, I don't think no action afterwards.
Thank you, Heather.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.